If you have to make a funny face when you're stretching, then you're not stretching properly and you're not going to get the best results possible. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you the top 10 reasons your flexibility sucks. But before I start, you guys know the drill. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, ding, ding, ding. And if you don't want to watch the entire video, I will be including timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead to the section that you want. Now, onto the topic at hand. A lot of people are very restricted in their mobility and they have tons of flexibility issues. And if you are one of those people, it is probably because you are doing one or more of these 10 things. So, what is the number one reason that your flexibility sucks? Well, the number one reason that your flexibility sucks is that you're not stretching. This one is pretty self-explanatory. I don't really need to go into too much detail, but I will anyway. If you're not stretching, you're not going to improve your flexibility. So if you are not stretching, I'm going to include a video right up over here that you can do. It is a quick core 4 on the floor exercise. It is a basic stretch. It takes about 6 minutes to complete, and it is a stretching sequence that was created by Ann and Chris Frederick of the Stretch to Win Institute. They also wrote the book Stretch to Win, so if you want to find ways to improve your stretching, then I would highly recommend either reading that book or taking some of their courses. Now, the number two reason that your flexibility sucks is that you're not strength training. Now, this may seem counterintuitive. You're thinking, well, you know what? If I don't have good flexibility, isn't strength training going to further exacerbate the symptoms of my poor flexibility? And the short answer is no, it will not. One of the reasons why strength training is going to be really important at improving your flexibility is muscles work in opposing forces. So at every single joint, there are going to be muscles on the anterior side, so the front of the body, and the posterior side. And if you have a length tension discrepancy between those opposing forces, that is going to limit your range of motion. So by incorporating a properly designed strength training routine, you can minimize the length tension discrepancies within the muscles and the opposing forces of your body. Now, the number three reason why your flexibility sucks is that you're performing basic static stretching. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing static stretching if it's something that you enjoy, but if you are trying to maximize your results, static stretching is not going to make the cut. Rather, doing something like proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitated stretching or PNF stretching is going to achieve much greater results for you. I'm going to include a video right up over here. You can click on it, and it is a PNF stretching sequence for the hamstrings. One of the reasons why proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitated stretching is going to be far superior to something like your basic static stretching is that it is going to improve your neurological efficiency. And one of the ways that it achieves this is by making you an active participant in the stretching motion, whereas with static stretching, it's very passive. The way that proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitated stretching works, there's three different variations. There's contract relax, there's agonist contract, and then there's contract relax agonist contract. Basically, what each of these are, when you are performing contract relax, what you are doing is essentially taking the muscle through its range of motion. Once you can no longer go any further, then what you are going to do is you are going to contract the muscle that you are stretching. Once you have contracted the muscle that you are stretching, you are going to hold that for anywhere from 4 to 10 seconds, ideally somewhere around the 6-second mark. And then once 6 seconds has elapsed, you will then exhale, relax. And once you relax, you will be able to get deeper into the stretch. When it comes to agonist contract works very similarly. You're taking the muscle to its end range, and once you've taken it to its end range, what you do is you want to actually activate the antagonist muscle. So let's say you are stretching your hamstring muscle. The opposing muscle to the hamstrings do hip extension. That's one of their functions. So what you would want to do is hip flexion. So by activating the hip flexors, you are doing agonist contraction. And when it comes to contract relax agonist contraction, this is a combination of contract relax and agonist contraction. So if I was doing CRAC, so crack stretching with a patient, what I would do, I'm going to use the hamstring as an example, I would take their hamstring into a particular range of motion that feels comfortable for them. And then once they are no longer able to go any farther, then I will have them contract their hamstring into my hand. I will have them hold that for roughly 6 seconds. Once they have held that for 6 seconds, then I will take them deeper into the stretch, and the patient will assist me by contracting the agonist muscle of the muscle that I'm stretching. So if I'm stretching their hamstrings, they are going to flex their hip flexors. So by activating the hip flexors, this is going to take them deeper into that stretch. Another form of stretching that's going to be far superior to your basic static stretching is going to be myofascial stretching. For myofascial stretching, I'm going to include a link right up over here. It's going to be the myofascial stretch for the psoas. And one of the reasons why myofascial stretching is going to be far superior to your static stretching is because it uses the principles of myofascial tension, and you are also strengthening as you are stretching. What exactly do I mean by that? Well, every single muscle is going to have specific actions that it will do. And if you were to reverse engineer those actions, that is going to be more beneficial, because by reverse engineering the actions, you have to actively engage the muscles that oppose the muscle that you are trying to stretch. I'm going to use the myofascial stretch of the psoas as an example, since that's the video that I included. When it comes to the psoas is going to have different actions depending on which part of the body you are focusing on. Basically, the psoas attaches from the front of the lumbar vertebrae all the way to the lesser trochanter of the hip. And in terms of its actions, what it's going to do at the lumbar spine, it is going to be responsible for flexion, ipsilateral flexion, and contralateral rotation. If we were to go down to the pelvis, at the pelvis, the psoas is going to be responsible for anteriorly tilting the pelvis, so dropping it forward, and it's also going to be responsible for contralateral rotation. And then if we were to take a look at the hip, the psoas is going to be responsible for flexion of the hip and also lateral rotation of the hip. So in order to do the myofascial stretch for the psoas, we would want to reverse engineer all of those movements by flexing the spine, contralaterally flexing the spine, and ipsilaterally rotating the spine. Then at the pelvis, because it is responsible for anteriorly tilting the pelvis and contralaterally rotating, we would want to posteriorly tilt the pelvis. The ipsilateral rotation is going to be a little bit more challenging, but if you have good body awareness, it is something that you will be able to do. And then the motion at the hip, the psoas is going to flex and laterally rotate the hip. So we would want to extend the hip and then medially rotate the hip. By doing all of those motions, what we are doing is we are actively creating as much myofascial tension on the psoas as possible, while simultaneously strengthening all the muscles that oppose the movements that the psoas is responsible for. The number 4 reason why your flexibility sucks is that you're stretching top muscles. I've already gone through this in yesterday's video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail right now, but basically you have tight muscles and taut muscles. And one of the things with tight versus taut is a lot of people will confuse taut muscles for tightness, particularly with things like your hamstrings and your upper back muscles. When it comes to your hamstrings, the hamstrings are going to attach to your ischial tuberosities of your pelvis. And if you have some type of postural dysfunction like an anterior pelvic tilt, what's going to happen is the origin point of your hamstrings is going to raise superiorly toward the ceiling. And because it is going to raise superiorly, that is going to make it come farther away from its insertion point. And because the origin is moving away from its insertion point, that means that it is going to be taut. It is going to be under more tension. And a lot of people will confuse this thinking that it is tight, and they will stretch their hamstrings even more. The problem with doing that is if you stretch a muscle that is taut, it is going to become even more lengthened, because tight muscles are in a shortened state, whereas taut muscles are going to be in a lengthened state. So by stretching a taut muscle, you are just going to lengthen it even more and create further dysfunction and further imbalance between all the different opposing muscles that you are trying to correct. The number 5 reason why your flexibility sucks is that you are overtraining your tight muscles. As I stated with the top muscles are going to be very lengthened. Well, with tight muscles are going to be shortened. So if you overtrain a shortened muscle, that is just going to make it even shorter and create further imbalance. Now, that's not to say that you can never strengthen a shortened muscle. Depending on what your main objective is, sometimes it's something that you need to do. If you are a professional athlete, then a lot of the training that's going to be involved in training for your sport is going to create a lot of imbalance. And at the end of the day, you have to determine what is your main objective. Do you want to improve your flexibility, or do you want to get better at your sport? If you want to get better at your sport, then depending on the sport, you may have to strengthen those tight muscles. But if it is your main objective to improve your flexibility, then you want to either stop strengthening your tight muscles, or if you are going to strengthen them, then you want to do something like a 2-to-1 ratio of strengthening your top muscles to your tight muscles. What I mean by that is, let's say you have really, really taut hamstrings and you have really, really tight and weak quadriceps. Well, in that case, for every 1 set that you do for your quadriceps, you would want to do 2 strengthening sets for your hamstrings. By utilizing this 2-to-1 ratio of strengthening your top muscles to your tight muscles, you are going to gradually decrease the length of your top muscles. And if your top muscles decrease in length, then naturally the opposing muscles are going to lengthen, and that is going to create more balance between the opposing forces. Now, the number 6 reason why your flexibility sucks is that you are stretching to the point of pain. One of the reasons why a lot of people tend to stretch to the point of pain is because of the gym expression, no pain, no gain. I absolutely hate that saying, and I made a video a few months back why that is a dumb saying. But basically, when you are stretching to the point of pain, you're not able to fully relax. What you want to do is create tension in the muscle that you are stretching. You do not want to create pain. I explained this also in yesterday's video, but when you do stretch, you are going to create micro tears in the muscle belly, and micro tears are going to be completely normal. It is a part of the stretching process. However, when you are stretching to the point of pain, you're not just creating micro tears in the muscle, you are actively tearing healthy tissue. And another reason why stretching to the point of pain is not going to be very good for your flexibility is when you are under extreme pain, what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to relax into the stretch, and by not being able to relax, you are going to tense the muscle that you are stretching. Now, if you know anything about stretching, you know the whole point of stretching is to lengthen a muscle. So if you are in extreme pain and you are really contracting the muscle that you are intending to be stretching, then you're not going to be able to get the maximum benefits. You want to be able to stretch where it is comfortable. If you have to make a funny face when you're stretching, then you're not stretching properly and you're not going to get the best results possible. So don't stretch to the point of pain. Another thing with regard to stretching to the point of pain is when you are in extreme pain, that is going to put you in a more sympathetic state. You have two states. You have parasympathetic and sympathetic. Your parasympathetic state is going to be your rest or digest system, and then your sympathetic state is your fight or flight. When you are in a more parasympathetic state, it's going to make it much more easy for you to relax, and the easier it is for you to relax, the easier it's going to be for you to just get deeper into the stretch and just relax into that stretch. Which brings us to the number 7 reason why your flexibility sucks, and that is you're holding your breath when stretching. This kind of relates back to number 6. If you are in extreme pain when you are stretching, it's going to be very common for you to hold your breath. And again, when you hold your breath, this is going to be tied to your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Again, sympathetic is your fight or flight, parasympathetic is rest and digest. So if you are in a parasympathetic state, that's going to be easier for you to relax. If you're holding your breath, that's going to put you into more of a sympathetic state. When you're in a sympathetic state, it's much more difficult for you to relax, and you're not going to elicit the best results possible from your stretching program. So you don't want to hold your breath when you're stretching. Ideally, what you want to do is synchronize your stretching with your breathing pattern. So you don't want to count a specific time of how long you're going to hold a stretch. Rather, what you want to do is synchronize the stretch with your breathing. So what you can do is inhale and get really into the stretch, and then once you can no longer inhale anymore, then you're going to exhale and use your exhale to guide you deeper into the stretch. You don't want to force it. You just want to naturally allow your body to guide you into a comfortable level of stretch where you're not having any pain and you're also not holding your breath because it is so painful. The number 8 reason why your flexibility sucks is that you're stretching in the same plane of motion. This is a mistake that a lot of people make. I'm going to use the hamstrings as an example. A lot of people, when they stretch their hamstrings, they're going to reach down, bend for their toes, and they're going to just stretch that one plane of motion. But you don't just have one hamstring muscle. You have multiple hamstring muscles. You have your biceps femoris, your semimembranosus, and your semitendinosus. Each of those muscles is going to be in a slightly different plane of motion, and because they are in a different position, you need to stretch each one in a different position as well. So by stretching up and down all the time, all you're going to be doing really is stretching your semitendinosus, which is the hamstring muscle that is right down the middle of your thigh, whereas your semimembranosus, which is the most medial, and the biceps femoris, which is the most lateral, aren't going to be stretched that effectively. Yes, you are still going to elicit some type of response from those two muscles. You will still stretch your biceps femoris and your semimembranosus by reaching forward, but it's not going to be as effective if you play around with the different ranges of motion. So rather than just stretching straight up and straight down, doing a wave-like motion and targeting all the different muscle fibers. So if you get your hamstring, you get your hamstring right up. You could also play around. Go out to the side, go in toward the midline. That way, when you go out toward the outside, you're going to be targeting more the semimembranosus because you're going to be targeting more the inner side of the hamstring group. When you bring your leg across your body and you put your leg to the inside, then you're going to be stretching the outermost hamstring, which is going to be the biceps femoris. So by playing around with different angles, going straight up, across, and then the other way across, you're going to be able to achieve maximum results from your stretching program. And this is not just the case for the hamstrings. This is for every single joint in the body. Same thing with the pec. Let's say you are stretching your pec. If you always just go right out to the side, you're going to be stretching the horizontal fibers. But if you want to get those more diagonal vertical fibers, then stretching horizontally isn't going to cut it. You're going to want to play around with the different ranges of motion. So you can stretch up top to stretch the more inferior fibers. You can go down below to stretch the more diagonal superior fibers, and just play around with the different ranges of motion. That way you can get the best results possible from your stretching routine. The number 9 reason why your flexibility sucks is that you're holding a stretch for too long. This is another mistake that a lot of people make. When you are holding a stretch, you don't need to hold it for 5 hours. Stretching generally 30 to 60 seconds for most people is going to be beneficial. You don't need to hold it any longer than that. Some people will benefit from a little bit, but if you do hold it for a little bit longer, there is going to be a bit of a diminishing returns in your stretching program, and it's really not going to be that beneficial to hold it for so much longer. So between 30 to 60 seconds really is going to be the sweet spot for most people. Some people will benefit from a little bit more, but generally 30 to 60 seconds is how long you should be holding a stretch. And again, you want to play around with different ranges of motion and move in and out of it like a wave-like pattern. You don't want to just hold it statically and hold it in one range of motion. And then finally, the number 10 reason why your flexibility sucks is that you're not holding the stretch long enough. You may be confused because this is the exact opposite of point 9, but just like somebody could hold a stretch for too long, you can also hold a stretch for not long enough. This is another mistake that I commonly see, especially with people that are stretching their quadriceps. It's very common if you go to a gym, you'll see somebody grab their foot, try and touch their foot to their butt. They'll literally hold it for 2 to 3 seconds and then relax it, and then that's it. If you're holding a stretch for only 2 to 3 seconds, you're not going to elicit enough of a response from that muscle because you're not going to create enough myofascial tension in that muscle to elicit the response that you want. You need to hold it for a long enough time that your body is going to be able to relax into the stretch and lengthen the muscle. If you just bounce your foot off of your butt and then let go of it right away, that's not going to achieve the best result possible. So you want to make sure that you're not holding it for too long to the point where you get this diminishing return with your stretching program, but you also don't want to just come in and out of the stretch over the course of a couple seconds because that also is not going to be beneficial. Again, 30 to 60 seconds for most people, that is going to be the sweet spot for how long you should hold a stretch. But that's pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.